I'm sure you agree that in strategy, we can only act better when we know better. But if this is the case, it is of value to look at the very concept of knowledge as input for decision making just a little bit longer and see how it contrasts with the alternative, which is, well, basing your decisions on opinion. And this very dichotomy is not random. It is actually the core element of something that we call epistemology, which is the study of knowledge, or looking at the differences between opinion and knowledge. And this is important for a very good reason because, well, the World Economic Forum puts skills like critical thinking and judgment and decision making in the top 10 key skills for the 21st century. And this is for a very good reason because if we actually apply knowledge in practice, we develop the skill of demonstrating wisdom. And with that, I do not mean the abstract wisdom of the ages, but the actual properly applying knowledge in practice, which is something that we want when it comes to strategic decision making. Whereas the alternative, well, would be applying opinion, which is not a skill at all because it would mean we are left to speculate. Now, if this is the case, then if we take this just a little bit further, it is of value to use the very well-known data, information, knowledge, wisdom hierarchy. You can find it on the internet. It's usually presented in a pyramid shape, but I tend to prefer the one with the circles. And I'm sure you'll agree that this is something that we apply in strategic thinking as well. We start out with data, and we use that data to turn it into information, and I make logically true and sufficiently justified statements about that, and results in knowledge, and this knowledge can be input, and this input, if we apply it properly, would result in wisdom. But it is important to recognize that the very same data and information can in fact be used for something that has nothing, if anything, to do with knowledge. And the very first thing that can go wrong is if you make a statement that is unclear. And this is very important because clarity is the gateway standard for knowledge. And why? Well, for a simple reason. If you state something about the business world that is unclear, it is impossible for anyone to assess whether or not it's relevant or accurate. So that's the very first criterion for something to be knowledge, but there are two more. The second thing is what you state must be logically true. And the third one is it must be sufficiently justified. And in every instant, if what you say is either unclear, illogical, or unjustified, it can only result in speculation. So there is such a thing as a knowledge domain, and there is such a thing as, well, not knowledge domain. And this is important to recognize because we can only act better when we know better. And this also means that these very familiar terms like alignment, success, disruption, and threat, but also many other terms that are so common in strategic thinking, actually prohibit you from generating and applying knowledge, and hence from improving strategic decision making. So, to sum it up, management jargon actually masks meaning. And that is something that we look for because no information in strategic thinking practice has any intrinsic meaning. We have to establish what it means. And just to illustrate how far you can stretch something using abstract terms, I found this example on the internet where it simply stated that business success is the result of combining creativity, confidence, and good communication skills. But of course, all of these terms are unclear and difficult to define. So the question we must ask ourselves, how would this be useful in practice? No. As a summary, yes, we use data and information, but there is such a thing as a knowledge domain and a not knowledge domain. And of course, we want to remain inside the knowledge domain. And that means that what we say is clear, logically true, and sufficiently justified. Because if we don't do that, if we do not make statements that are clear, justified, and logically true, well, the problem is we cannot act better, but we're always left to speculate. So if I would have to give you one advice in practice, I would give you this one. It is always try to justify what you say when it comes to strategy. And if you want to learn more about this, and especially about the difference between scientific knowledge and knowledge that is useful in practice, simply look at part 2 of this video.